Good evening. Welcome to Cupertino Insight. My name is Dorothy Cornelius, and I'm the City Clerk of Cupertino, as well as the host for this program. Prior to each regular City Council meeting, we will try to focus on various issues that are important to the residents of Cupertino, as well as issues that will be coming before Council. In addition to that, we hope to acquaint each of you with how your local government works. One of the major issues appearing before Council in the not-too-distant future will be, hopefully, a solution to the solid waste management disposal problem. In order to help them address this issue, Council recently appointed a 15-member citizen committee to study the various alternatives and make their recommendation to Council. Now I'd like you to view this tape showing interviews with various commission members as well as its chairperson, Tom Boyd.
My name is Tom Boyd, and I'm the chairman of the Cupertino Solid Waste Advisory Board. We were appointed by the Cupertino City Council in early September to study Cupertino's solid waste needs through the end of this century. And we've specifically been charged with reviewing the reports that were prepared by the North Santa Clara County Solid Waste Management Authority, which is a government agency that was formed by Cupertino, Los Altos Hills, Sunnyvale, Palo Alto, and some of the unincorporated areas of the county. We've been studying that report since September 21st. On a weekly basis, we've been holding public meetings and hearing testimony from various authorities in the areas of waste disposal, recycling, geology, hydrology. And our task is to ultimately advise the City Council regarding the appropriateness of the recommendation that's been made by the SWEMA committee and staff.
Waste disposal is a very critical problem in Santa Clara County. Anytime you see the amount of growth that Valley has had, we've had in the last 25 or 30 years, you have to become aware that among other environmental problems, waste disposal is an important one. The thing that worries me is getting the people of our city, of the North County area, and of the whole valley to look at waste disposal as a real problem that we all have to tackle together. I guess I'm disturbed somewhat by things being more or less pushed on to Cupertino and the surrounding area, and then the community being asked to come in on it. I think that we have citizens who are capable of making some really good decisions when they're asked to, and I feel that part of the Citizens Advisory Committee's role on order from the City Council is to come up with a report that will acquaint the people not only of our city but the area with how we see SWEMA's report, JPA, and the Bryan Canyon proposal. So I'm distressed when I hear a citizen say we don't have a waste disposal problem, because that's simply not true.
Well, I think that the most prominent concern in this committee has been the question of whether the canyon is geologically suitable for a dump site. We have requested, let me back up and give a little bit of background. The SWEMA report relies upon MCON, which is a well-known consulting firm, for analysis of the geology, and the MCON study concludes that the canyon is suitable with certain engineering improvements. We have also spoken with several people who are expert in this area who disagree with that. The most prominent of them has been Dr. Robert Compton, who is a professor emeritus of geology at Stanford, who has questioned the thoroughness and accuracy of the MCON report. We also have talked to John O'Rourke, who has been in the business of examining potential dump sites for many years, who has questioned it, and Dr. Paul Roberts of Stanford, who is on the committee and has expertise in the area of groundwater, has questioned the report. One of the most frustrating things for me personally is that it has been very difficult to arrange a discussion or a public meeting between Dr. Compton and others who disagree with the MCON report and MCON experts.
I agree with John that there have been some very serious questions about the information that we've received on the actual geology of Bryan Canyon. There are members of the committee very, very concerned about damming up the low end of the canyon, the end that's near Stevens Creek. There are questions about leachate going into the groundwater. A lot of environmental issues we feel have not been touched upon. And also, members of the committee felt almost from the beginning that certain very, very important alternatives were never considered in the SWEMA report. It was almost as if there were 4 possible alternatives and that's all. And so we're hoping that our report will clarify some of our objections in a positive manner, in a way that our city can move forward and move ahead. Citizens committees usually rise to the very highest level, and this committee has done the same thing. I've found people willing to give long hours, at least one night a week, and many people way beyond that. As John said, we've had people on this committee who've called all across the United States trying to check out various waste disposal sites that have been brought up in the reports. I feel that the committee as such does represent a really good cross-section of Cupertino. And Cupertino's 37,500 people. We have a certain quality of life here that we would like to maintain. And I think possibly that's what each of the citizens brings. Some expertise, an ability to analyze data, come to some good, direct conclusions, and a hope that we can keep Cupertino a very good place for people to live.
Cupertino can be quite assured that the decision is being made on the basis of facts that have been carefully collected and not simply an emotional reaction.
At their last meeting, the Cupertino City Council approved the expenditure of $175,000 in community development block grant funds. Here tonight is Jim Sisk, the city's Director of Planning and Development, to tell us a little bit about the block grant program and what the monies will be used for. Jim?
Over here.
What is the Community Development Block Grant Program?
This is a federal program that was initiated, Dorothy, in 1974. It's an attempt on the part of the federal government to return federal taxes to the local communities. We, as well as all the other cities in the county, form a urban county, and the federal government returns through the county administration to the city certain monies every year. To date, the city of Cupertino has received approximately $2.3 million since 1964.
Do all the cities get the same amount of money, or is it distributed differently?
Actually, the smaller cities in the county, along with Santa Clara County, those cities of less than 50,000 population, share an amount of money which the federal government gives back to the county on an equal basis.
I see. And what are the kinds of things that the money is usually used for?
There are federal restrictions as to how the money can be used by the local jurisdictions. The money has to be directed toward one of 3 different areas: benefit low and moderate income people, for some type of a public emergency in the area, such as flooding that might cause damage to a sanitary sewer facility. Monies can be expended for that. And monies can be expended in areas that are subject to slums and blight.
I see. What exactly did the council approve for use of this money?
Yeah. Since the beginning, Cupertino has expended our money primarily toward maintaining the existing stock of housing in our target areas. There are 3 areas in Cupertino that tend to be lower income in nature, that being Monte Vista, Garden Gate, and Rancho Rinconada. Of the $175,000 that we'll be getting this year, the City Council determined that $100,000 of that would be set aside for low interest and no interest loans for persons residing in those areas to maintain their residential structures.
I see. Now, 2 of the areas you mentioned are not in the Cupertino city limits. Does that mean that we can use that money outside the city limits then?
That's correct, yes. We, inasmuch as we are the closest governmental body to those particular target areas, and that those target areas are within our sphere of influence, so to speak, we do regulate the expenditures of money in both city and county areas, yes.
I see. Thank you. When do you expect the work to be started on some of these projects?
Well, the Housing Rehabilitation Program, as I indicated, has been our primary program since 1974, so it is an ongoing program. We rehabilitate from 6 to 7 houses a year. It seems that the average loans in those areas are from $18,000 to $20,000 per dwelling unit. Another part of the program, we expend money for public improvements as well. We have to date expended monies in the Monte Vista area for water lines and street improvements. Additionally, we've expended money throughout the community for the removal of architectural barriers for handicapped persons. You may have seen the depressed curbs that have been installed throughout the community and things of that nature.
All right. What type of home improvements would one have to need in order to apply for one of these loans?
Yeah, that's a good question. The first thing I think everyone should know that these loans are not for aesthetic purposes. They're loans that are intended to bring an older structure up to code. Example, a house that might be improperly wired or have some heating or furnace problems. The loans are intended to bring those up to code. They're intended to assist people in maintaining leaky roofs during the winter and things of that nature.
I see. It sounds like a worthwhile program to me.
It certainly is. There's no question about that.
And I do take it that there are residents who take advantage of it.
Oh, yes. As far as the housing rehabilitation loans, there's a waiting list, and there always has been.
That's great. Jim, is this something the city has to apply for annually?
Yes, annually, a certain amount of money is sent from the federal government to the county, and then that is dispersed to each of the cities that are members of the urban county program. The city does spend a lot of time during the latter part of each year having public hearings in the neighborhoods, trying to gain input from the people living within those neighborhoods as to the expenditure of the block grant money. So I think one thing that everyone should be very aware of, that arbitrary decisions are not made at the council level as to the expenditure, and public input is important to assist the council in making those decisions.
Thank you very much for being here with us, Jim.
My pleasure.
And shedding some light on the Community Development Block Grant Program.
Thank you.
Okay. One of the major issues in Cupertino today is traffic, particularly traffic in West Cupertino. What I'd like to do now is present a tape of showing the Director of Public Works, Bert Viskovich, discussing some of those problems and some of the things that are being done to help mitigate them.
In general, the traffic in Cupertino is made up of several components. One, the residential population, commercial, office, De Anza College, and commute traffic. Surprisingly, through studies conducted during the general plan, staff found that a majority of this traffic is made up of our own traffic that we have control over, while a small percentage is a commute traffic, the true commuter that originates outside the city and ends outside the city. My name is Bert Viskovich. I'm the Public Works Director for the City of Cupertino. On January 18th, 1984, the city will be implementing a strategy in the West Cupertino area to try to divert commute traffic from the residential neighborhoods. This will be done with a level 1, level 2 approach, which was recommended by the Citizens Traffic Committee that was set up by the City Council. It was apparent during the general plan hearings that traffic was a major issue in Cupertino and had to be dealt with immediately. The committee worked out several strategies, different options and alternatives to implement in order to try to discourage the commuter from intruding into the neighborhoods in the west area. The level 1, level 2 consisted of minor strategies, while level 3 was a drastic measure. Actually, closures of certain streets would have to be undertaken in order to permanently close off the commuter from utilizing it. Levels 1 and level 2 will have some inconvenience to the residents in the area in the sense that travel time will be longer, as well as the commute traffic travel time will also suffer, and that is the main basis of trying to provide a level 1, level 2 approach. Okay, as I mentioned before, the major input into the Cupertino area during the PM peak hour are the roads of Route 85 and Stelling Road at this location. This traffic then proceeds down Stevens Creek Boulevard, either down Stelling Road, or some may be diverted over to Bub Road until exit at Rainbow, which then continues on to De Anza Boulevard. The other traffic that proceeds down Stelling Road will continue also to Prospect out to De Anza Boulevard. In order to divert this traffic from utilizing the West Cupertino area, it must be slower to travel down the neighborhood streets than it is to travel down the major arterials. So the overall goal and premise of this overall strategy is to keep the traffic or the commuter on Stevens Creek Boulevard out to De Anza Boulevard, or to try to divert that traffic from even getting to Stevens Creek Boulevard by having them remain on 280 and utilize De Anza Boulevard from 280 all the way down to Prospect Avenue. So again, the major premise of this plan is to try to make the time longer from point A, which would be a point at Stelling and Stevens Creek, to point B, which is Prospect and De Anza Boulevard. Level 1 plan is to try to enhance the major arterials to flow better. One of the major improvements that has just been completed is the improvement to the Bollinger Road, De Anza Boulevard intersection by providing additional left turns and 3 straight through rather than 2 straight through lanes. This will relieve the bottleneck that presently exists at that intersection and make De Anza Boulevard flow better. The other major improvement is the traffic signal interconnect, which is a computerized method of having traffic signals integrated and having platoons of cars travel with less delays and less stops. Level 1 then achieves that by continually improving the interconnect system, spot widening as needed, such as south of Rainbow Drive and other areas where what will improve the traffic flow on the major arterials. The level 2 must go hand in hand with level 1 in the sense that level 2 must impede the flow to make the time along Stelling Road longer than the time on De Anza Boulevard. Therefore, impediments must be installed at several intersections in order to accomplish this. As we look at Stelling Road now, we already have a traffic signal at Pepper Tree and Stelling, McClellan and Stelling. Our first installation of a stop sign will be at Hunt Ridge and Stelling Road. The concern with a stop sign at this location is that there might be some diversion through the Rose Blossom neighborhood which will have to be monitored, and if that occurs, other strategies may have to be implemented in the neighborhood in order to avoid the intrusion of traffic through said neighborhood. The next intersection that will receive a stop sign will be Orion at this location. Orion then would be somewhat spaced, evenly spaced, between the other stops along the route. The major concern in this area is that traffic may try to avoid the additional stop signs and use the Shadowwood and Scotland roadways to get out to Rainbow and then out to De Anza Boulevard. As we proceed down Stelling Road, the next impediment would be the intersection of Rainbow and Stelling Road. Since it's already existing, the next installation or the additional installation of a stop sign will be at Waterford and Stelling Road. Another monitoring requirement will be to watch for any cars that bypass this intersection through the neighborhood to avoid the next intersection, which will have a stop sign, that is at Prospect and Stelling Road. These stop signs along these intersections hopefully will make the delay or the time of travel longer and discourage the use of Stelling Road and encourage the use of the major arterials. It should be noted that this plan is a trial plan, and input from the community is very important in order to evaluate the effectiveness of this plan and to determine the impacts in order to determine whether there should be a permanent installation or other methods should be implemented.
The Council of PTAs and Community Services recently sponsored a canned food drive for holiday projects. We went to visit the sites where those goods were packaged.
This is Cheryl Guimau with the Cupertino Community Holiday Project from Sedgwick School. On my left is Sally Brennan from Cupertino Community Services, and on my right is Myrna Gillesco, who is heading up the project for this year. I headed the project up for the past 3 years. The project has been going on under the auspices of Cupertino Council of PTA for the past 23 years. Last year, we decided to expand to the entire community and brought in Cupertino Community Services, the City of Cupertino, and the Cupertino Union School District as partial sponsors. This project has served normally about 200 families and 700 to 800 people each year. Each family receives a box, from a box to about 6 boxes of food, depending on the size of the family, and 4 to 5 toys for every child under 14, gifts for teenagers. We also serve senior citizens from our Senior Citizen Center. They all receive boxes of food and small gifts.
This year, the schools have collected all the food, and I think we're going to have more than enough. CBIS is down today from Cupertino High School, is helping us sort the toys, sort food. They're going to start packing food, and we have a group of parents here, and the parents will be coming in all week. We have students from the juvenile hall coming in, students from the Star House coming in to help, scout troops, and JCs are coming in, and service organizations have donated money and food, and it's just all coming together right now.
The names come to us from teachers, from principals, from public health nurses, from sometimes neighbors who see our advertising in the newspaper and think that a family might need some assistance. A letter goes out to that family indicating that they have been chosen to become part of the holiday project, and if they wish to participate, they call myself at Cupertino Community Services or they call Myrna. All names are also sent down to the Christmas Exchange, which covers the whole valley, which makes sure that there's no duplication. Any of the families who don't come in during the last week come over to Cupertino Community Services, and then we make sure that every family gets something. And we use our resources at that time and whatever is left over from here.
Recently, Mayor John Plungy addressed the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors regarding problems that are occurring from increased use of Stevens Creek Quarry. We had the opportunity to tape portions of that hearing as well as interview Mayor Plungy.
The quarry itself has been in existence for a large number of years, probably before many of the homes were up there. The homes themselves, many of them were put in under county zoning ordinances, and when it was under the county. Since that time, much of the area has been annexed by the city. The problem has been there somewhat in a latent form all along, namely truck traffic and the like. But within the last year to 2 years, it seems like there has been increasing numbers of trucks, increasing activity in the area. And the activity is such that there's a real problem for people who live not only near the quarry, but also along the corridor from the quarry to Route 280 along Foothill Boulevard. The problem is twofold. The trucks going up to the quarry when they're empty make a considerable amount of noise, hitting the road, kind of a large, almost like a cymbal effect there. And then, of course, coming back down the road as they head to the freeway after they're loaded, they may not make as much noise, resounding noise, but the problem is complicated by the fact the truck is now filled. There's gravel spilling over onto the road, some dirt and the like. So this increased traffic has caused quite a bit of problem because it not only exists during what would be considered normal working hours of the day, but also the fact that they have been up there loading the trucks, or the trucks getting in line to be loaded sometimes as early as 4 and 5 o'clock in the morning. And this has not only been Monday through Friday, but there have been cases on Saturdays as well. So it's just increased activity has caused the residents to complain. We are concerned about it because we feel there's a real effect on the environment there. And so that's why we got into it. The property itself is within the county, and so the city cannot regulate it on its own. It actually goes to the county, and we have asked them to put some conditions on a use permit to attempt to mitigate the problem. Unfortunately, we were not as successful as we had hoped we would be. The use permit was granted. It will be reviewed this coming summer during the height of activity to see if they have been good neighbors. In our presentation before the county, we pointed out, according to the county's own general plan, if there is an expansion of quarrying or mining activities, that the concerns of the environment should be addressed. The attorney for the quarry stated that there has not been an increase or an expansion of the quarrying activity, and possibly on a technical basis as far as physical, lateral, geographical expansion, there possibly has not been. However, we do believe very strongly that there has been an increase in the intensity of the operation. A similar problem existed in the past with Kaiser. Kaiser was willing on their own to more or less come up with some compromises, to take some mitigating measures to live alongside of the community. Thus far, we have not seen this from this quarry, and we're hoping now, even though we did not get the EIR called for, at least with the county review coming up, we're going to take a look, and hopefully the supervisors especially will take a look at, how much of a good neighbor are they going to be? Are they going to be willing to work with the community to try and resolve some of this problem? If there are violations of this use permit, the hours of operation, speed limits and the like, not only to call us, but I think more particularly to call the Board of Supervisors and to report that. I think one of the best things can be done is to build up the evidence if they are not abiding by the decision, not abiding by the rules, that should be brought to the attention of the Board of Supervisors. I think that the public's concern can help most significantly, and this is where we as a city, although officially we cannot do anything because it's not in our jurisdiction, certainly we can be supportive of them. They come to us just as we went and carried the appeal to the Board of Supervisors. We will be following it, we'll be doing our own monitoring, and then when the review time comes up, we will have our input to the county. And if we feel that they have not improved, that is still a problem, you can be certain that we'll be there and very strongly pushing the case of the residents and trying to still get some sort of mitigation on the operation of this quarry.
A regular feature of this program will be a brief review of some of the items that Council will be discussing. At tonight's meeting, one of the first items on the agenda is an informational letter that will be going out to water consumers regarding a change in the disinfectant to be used in the water. Around February of 1984, the Santa Clara Valley Water District will be switching from a chlorine to a combined chlorine-ammonia disinfectant. This should improve the quality of the water for the average user. Hospitals, doctors, kidney dialysis patients, and owners of tropical pet stores have been informed of the change of chemical because they will have to use some kind of treatment on the water. A public hearing will be held tonight to consider an increase in the transient occupancy tax. This is more commonly called a hotel tax. In 1982, the voters of Cupertino gave Council the power to increase the hotel tax by 1% a year up to a total of 10%. However, they can't do that without a public hearing. Right now, our city's hotel tax is 5%. The proposed increase would bring it up to 6%. The city has received a letter from Walter Ward, the general manager of Valco Park, requesting that the tax not be increased until such time as there is a hotel in the city and it has had the opportunity to become established. Another item on the agenda that is of interest to the residents is a notice to terminate affiliation with the North Santa Clara County Solid Waste Management Authority. This doesn't mean that the decision's been made to pull out of the JPA, but merely will prevent financial losses to the city should it ultimately decide to do this. Another item of interest is an amendment to the city's hazardous materials storage ordinance. Because there are so many potentially dangerous chemicals used by various companies in Santa Clara County, many of which are located in Cupertino, and because of such things as leakage and spills, it has become necessary to at least keep an inventory of the types of chemicals that are being stored in these facilities. The city is still amending their current ordinance to come into compliance with state law, but most of these are merely technical changes. I would like to thank all of you for watching the program this evening and suggest that you do stay tuned to watch the City Council. I would appreciate hearing from each of you regarding your comments of this show, on this show, and any particular features you would like to see incorporated into the program would also be considered. Thanks again for watching.